It was supposed to be a simple family reunion. I hadn't seen most of my relatives in years, so when the invitation came through, I was excited. I packed my bags, drove across the state, and was ready to spend a weekend reconnecting with the people who had been a big part of my life growing up. Little did I know this weekend would change everything. When I arrived, the house was full of laughter, the smell of food wafted through the air, and kids were running around like they owned the place. It felt like the good old days until things started to feel off. My brother-in-law Dave had been acting strangely ever since I arrived. He'd make these little side comments that felt out of place, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. I brushed it off though. Family gatherings always had their awkward moments, right? The weekend flew by. We ate together, played games, and swapped old stories. But towards the end, something happened that I couldn't ignore. I went to check my bank account. I had a habit of checking my finances periodically, and for some reason I felt a tug in my gut to do so right then. I was completely unprepared for what I saw. My balance was almost zero. I blinked, stared at the screen, and double-checked, but the numbers didn't change. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. There were multiple withdrawals, large ones, from my account. I started scrolling through the transactions, my fingers trembling. Then I saw it. The charges were from the past 2 days, since I'd arrived. I felt sick. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it didn't take long to figure it out. Dave had been the last person I'd seen with my wallet. Earlier that afternoon, he'd helped me with some cash for the group outing we had planned. He'd insisted on paying for everything, and I'd reluctantly handed over my card, thinking it was just a kind gesture. But now the pieces clicked into place. I couldn't believe it. My own brother-in-law had drained my account. I confronted him later that night. He was sitting on the couch, laughing with some of the others, completely oblivious to what I just discovered. I walked up to him, my voice tight with anger and disbelief. "Dave," I said, "what the hell did you do?" He looked up, confused at first, then his face hardened. "What are you talking about?" "My account," I snapped. "It's empty." "You took the money, didn't you?" The smug look on his face was the final blow. "We needed it," he said, his tone casual, almost dismissive. "You were fine with it earlier, weren't you? It wasn't that much, you can always make more." I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. He was trying to justify it. Like he was entitled to my money because they needed it. "I trusted you," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. "You're my family. How could you do this to me?" He just shrugged, not even looking sorry. "You don't get it, do you? Things are tough right now. You can afford to help. We had to do it. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I couldn't speak for a moment. The audacity. The betrayal. I knew I had to get out of there. I didn't care about the weekend anymore. I grabbed my things and left. As I drove back home, I couldn't stop thinking about how someone I trusted, someone I thought was family, had just taken everything I had and didn't even seem to care. It's been weeks and I still can't shake the feeling that something inside me broke that day. I thought family would always have your back. But sometimes they'll take everything from you and leave you wondering if you ever really knew them at all. The weeks that followed were a blur of anger, disbelief, and the bitter taste of betrayal. I couldn't bring myself to talk to Dave or anyone else from the reunion. The thought of confronting him again made my blood boil, but the thought of letting it go made me feel weak, like I was accepting what he had done. I didn't want to be the kind of person who just turned a blind eye when I'd been wronged. I spent hours on the phone with my bank trying to get the charges reversed. Every time I explained the situation, they were sympathetic, but it was clear this was going to take time. The process was slow, and with each passing day, I felt a piece of me unraveling. But no matter how much I tried to focus on other things, Dave's words kept echoing in my head. We needed it. It was the we that got to me the most. It wasn't just him. He had done this with others in mind, with the assumption that, as family, I owed him something. I wasn't sure who else knew what happened, but it was clear that everyone who had been around him that weekend had been complicit. My mind kept circling back to that moment, when I confronted him, the look on his face, how he acted like it was no big deal. I had to get answers. I started with Sarah, my sister. She had always been the one I could talk to about anything, and I knew if anyone would understand the depth of what had happened, it would be her. I reached out one afternoon asking if we could meet up. We met at a small cafe, and as soon as she saw my face, she knew something was wrong. I didn't even have to say anything at first. She could tell by my expression that I wasn't the same person who had arrived at the reunion weeks ago. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I took a deep breath and started. "Sarah, I don't know how to say this, but Dave, he stole from me. He took money from my bank account." Her face turned pale. "What? When? How?" I explained everything, How I checked my account after the reunion, the withdrawals, the confrontations. As I spoke, I could see the gears turning in her head, but she didn't speak immediately. Her silence was more than just surprise. It was as if she knew something but didn't want to admit it. "I'm so sorry," she finally said, her eyes filled with guilt. "I didn't know it was that bad." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. Sarah hesitated before speaking again. I knew he had his financial issues. But I didn't realize how desperate things were. I thought he was getting better, you know? But I guess I just turned a blind eye. I didn't want to believe he would go this far. My heart sank. I had hoped that Sarah, my sister, would stand by me, but instead, it felt like she was just as complicit as the rest of them. She had seen the signs and yet she'd chosen to ignore them. "Sarah, you have to understand," I said, my voice shaking now. "This isn't just about the money. It's about trust. I thought I could rely on you and him, us, but now I feel like I don't know anyone anymore." She nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I know, and I'm sorry. I really am. I don't know what got into him, but that's no excuse." I wanted to yell, to demand she do something, but I didn't have it in me. The damage was already done, and the worst part. How do you repair something when the very foundation of your family has been cracked open? As I left the cafe, I felt a weight on my chest. I couldn't let it go, not now. I had to take action. But where to start? Who could I trust? My sister wasn't the ally I thought she was, and Dave, well, Dave was beyond reach. I spent the next few days contemplating my options. I could press charges, though I wasn't sure if I wanted to take it that far. Part of me just wanted to walk away and cut them all off for good, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything either. I had to make a choice. Either I let this tear me apart, or I took control and showed them that I wasn't going to let family abuse me anymore. It wouldn't be easy and it wouldn't be quick, but I was done feeling helpless. I wasn't going to let him win. The days that followed were filled with a quiet determination. I didn't tell anyone, but I knew I had to do something about what had happened. My mind wouldn't stop running through the possibilities: filing a police report, suing for the stolen money, confronting Dave in a more calculated way. But something told me that wasn't the answer. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for justice, and a way to move on without constantly feeling like I was drowning. I called my lawyer, a friend of a friend who had helped me with a few things in the past. After explaining the situation, he suggested that we go through the proper legal channels, especially since the withdrawals were significant. There was a chance I could get my money back, but it would take time, effort, and some serious paperwork. I agreed, knowing it would be a long process, but it was the right thing to do. But then came the hardest part: confronting Dave again. I wasn't sure if he was expecting me to let it slide or if he thought I had forgotten about it by now. Either way, I wasn't ready to let him off the hook. I needed to show him that I wouldn't be silenced, that his actions had consequences, even if he didn't think they did. One evening, I texted him asking to meet in person. It felt strange, like I was walking into a trap I had set myself, but I couldn't keep avoiding him forever. He agreed and we met at a local bar, Neutral Ground. I arrived early, ordering a drink to calm my nerves. My mind was racing, but I couldn't let him see how much this had affected me. I had to appear in control. When he walked in, his expression was smug, like he had won some sort of victory, like he had no idea that everything he'd done was slowly falling apart around him. "Hey," he said, giving me a forced smile as he slid into the booth across from me. "You wanted to talk?" I nodded, taking a slow sip of my drink. "Yeah, I wanted to talk about what happened." He leaned back in his seat, his arms folding across his chest like he was already prepared to brush me off. "What about it? I thought we were over that." "I'm not over it, Dave," I said firmly, locking eyes with him. "I haven't been over it since the day I saw my bank account drained. You know what you did? You took my money, and you justified it like it was nothing." He shifted in his seat, but his eyes never wavered. "Look, I said I was sorry. What more do you want from me?" "You're sorry?" I repeated, feeling a burst of anger bubble up. "You're sorry because I found out, or because you actually care? Because you're still acting like it was okay? That I was supposed to just let it go? People do worse things every day, okay? It wasn't like I ruined your life, I just—" "No, you didn't ruin my life, Dave," I cut in, leaning forward. "But you damaged something I can't just fix. You broke my trust. You took something that wasn't yours and used it to fill a gap in your own life without even asking. Without even considering that I might not be okay with it." His eyes flickered briefly, something like regret or discomfort crossed his face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Look, I get it, all right? You're upset. But we needed that money. Things were tight and we I asked, the word biting like acid. What do you mean we? Are you speaking for everyone now? For your own family? For mine. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. Because I'm not in this with you, Dave. Not anymore. For a moment there was silence. He looked away, the defensiveness slipping away for the first time. The smugness had faded, but the arrogance was still there. Fine, he muttered, looking down at the table. I screwed up, okay? But you're blowing this way out of proportion. You don't get it, I said, shaking my head. It's not just about the money. It's about how you treat the people in your life, like they're disposable. Like we exist to serve your needs, to make up for your mistakes. And I'm not doing that anymore. There was a long pause. I could tell that this conversation wasn't going the way he expected, and part of me felt a small sense of relief. Maybe this was the wake-up call he needed, though I didn't know if he was capable of hearing it. Finally, Dave exhaled, standing up from the table. You're right, he said, though the words didn't feel sincere. I messed up. You'll get your money back, okay? I'll sort it out. I don't just want my money back, Dave, I said quietly as he turned to leave. I want you to understand what you've done. To take responsibility for it. Not just to me but to everyone else you've used. And maybe, just maybe, you'll stop hurting people who are trying to be there for you. He didn't say anything else. He just walked out, leaving me sitting in the booth, feeling like I had just fought a battle I wasn't sure I'd won. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. I wasn't going to let him or anyone else dictate my life. It would take time, but I would rebuild the trust I'd lost, and I would never allow someone like him to take from me again. It wasn't over. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I might be able to find some peace. The next few days were a blur of mixed emotions. I was trying to navigate the fallout from my conversation with Dave while also sorting out the mess he had created. There were times when I felt like I had everything under control, and other times when the weight of the betrayal hit me all over again. Every little thing reminded me of how someone I had trusted had taken advantage of me without a second thought. It wasn't just the money, it was the sense of security, of family that had been shattered. The hardest part was knowing that, no matter what happened with the money, things would never be the same. I had always thought of family as something unbreakable, something that would stand the test of time and trouble. But now, it felt like the bonds were made of paper, fragile and ready to tear apart at any given moment. The bank had been able to trace some of the stolen funds, but they couldn't recover all of it yet. The legal process was moving but slowly. The money didn't come back immediately, and it was clear that I would need to go through additional steps to get everything fixed. As much as I wanted to just let it go and move on, I couldn't. Not after everything. I had tried to distance myself from the situation, but it was impossible to ignore it. Every time I picked up the phone or checked my bank account, it was a reminder of what had happened, and of what still wasn't right. Then, out of the blue, I got a message from Sarah. I hadn't heard from her since our meeting at the cafe, and truthfully, I wasn't sure I was ready to talk to her again. But the message caught my attention. She wanted to meet. I debated for a while, weighing my options. On one hand, I felt like I had been let down by her. On the other, I knew she was my sister, and deep down, I wasn't ready to sever that connection. Not yet. We met at a small park, one of those places where the trees lined the path and the grass was soft underfoot. It was quiet, too quiet, and I could tell by the look on her face that this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. Hey, she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. I know it's been a lot, but I wanted to talk. I didn't say anything at first, just nodded. I wasn't sure what she could possibly say to make things better, but I was willing to listen. I know I failed you, she continued, sitting down on a bench. And I hate that I'm the reason you're dealing with this mess. I should have stood by you. I should have said something to Dave. I should have, she paused, biting her lip. But I didn't. I was too afraid of what would happen if I did. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words were stuck in my throat. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been alone in all of this. I understand, I finally said, my voice quieter than I intended. But understanding doesn't make it okay. You weren't the one who had your trust broken. You weren't the one who was lied to. You didn't have to face what I did. And I get that you didn't know how bad it was, but you were there, Sarah. You saw the signs. You saw how things were with Dave. You knew what he was capable of, but you didn't step in. Her face fell, the guilt overwhelming her. I know, she whispered. And I hate myself for it. I do. I've been feeling sick over the whole thing because I knew I could have done something. But I didn't. I didn't want to make waves. I didn't want to cause problems. But you're right, I let it happen. And I failed you. There was a long silence between us. I could feel the weight of her words, but I didn't know what to do with them. How could I move forward when the person closest to me had chosen to stay silent in the face of something so wrong? I don't know what to say, Sarah, I said quietly. I'm not sure if I can just forgive you. You should have spoken up. You should have protected me. I know, she said again, her voice cracking. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm asking for a chance to make it right. If you'll let me, I want to help. I want to be there for you in any way I can. I stared at her, really looked at her for the first time in a while. My sister, my blood, had failed me when I needed her most. But there was something in her eyes now. A genuine desire to make amends, to rebuild what had been broken. It wasn't going to happen overnight, and I wasn't ready to put everything back together just yet. But maybe,